Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning and for joining us for the Kabbalah Cafe, lesson number 299. Today it's called the Kabbalah of Love. So there's a story which I've shared before, a parable that's given about a person who is brought up to heaven after his life, and they're giving him a tour of the different options, different places. So first he goes to hell, and when he goes to this hell, he sees that it actually doesn't look too bad. There's all these people sitting around the table, and this table is a whole feast, all this wonderful food. And he's surprised. He looks at the angel and he says, "Is this hell?" He says, "Well, wait and watch." And he sees that each of them are given these, the flatware, the forks and knives and spoons that they're given are so long that when you hold it, there's no way to get the food in your mouth. So there is this constant torture of all this wonderful blessings in front of you, but you can't partake of it. And he says this is the torture they had. And then he's brought to heaven. When he's brought to heaven, they same scene, all this wonderful food, all the flatware is way too long. You can't get it in your mouth. But instead of trying to feed themselves, each one is feeding the other. And because they're feeding the other person, they're able to use their long utensils to feed the other person, so they're able to do it. So in other words, the difference between heaven and hell is a difference between a world in which everyone is only concerned with their own pleasures, their own well-being, versus a world in which people are concerned and thinking about the well-being and the happiness and the pleasure of their fellow man. That is really ultimately the difference. In Judaism, when we talk about a utopian dream of what the world could look like, of what the world could be, if you look at all the messianic prophecies of Judaism, or this utopian vision of what we could try to make the world look like, the basis of it is a world in which there is true love and true concern and true respect, one person for another person, a world in which we talk about a world of peace and a world of love, and a world in which there is true love and respect, one individual for another. This theme has a special connection to this time of the year. We are in a 3-week period. We're about to begin a 9-day period starting this Wednesday, 9 days that are associated with the destruction of the first and second temple in Jerusalem. And we're told that this is a special time of year to focus more so than usual on the theme of love your fellow man. We're told because the reason why the temple was destroyed was because of the lack of love and concern, the irrational, so to speak, hatred that people had for each other. The infighting is what caused the Jewish people to implode and for their enemies to devour them and for the Jewish people to be exiled. And we continue to be, that saga continues today as far as the exile of the Jewish people. And it is the way to rectify the problem, of course, is through the love and respect that we have to try to nurture for each other. It's interesting that the first of these 9 days is a date that's actually mentioned in the Torah. If you look in the book of Numbers, there are some dates that are mentioned. It does tell us the days the Jewish people left Egypt. But one thing we usually do not find is the date of individuals passing from this world. We do not read in the Torah what was the date that Abraham died. What was the date that Isaac died? What was the date that Moses died? Some of this we have through oral tradition. The only biblical figure that it actually says the date on which he died, the day in which he left this world, was Aharon. Aharon, the high priest, we actually read it this past week. It says he died on the first day of the 5th month. You have to remember that in Jewish tradition, they originally didn't have names of the months, and that was something that was taken on during the Babylonian exile. But originally in biblical literature, it only speaks about the months as numbers. You have a month number 1, number 2. Month number 5 is the month we're about to begin this week, which is the month of Av. And the first day of the month of Av, it says, was the day in which Aaron died. And we're told that the reason why his passing is connected to that date specifically, and why the Torah speaks about it, is because those 9 days begin the 9 days of mourning over the destruction of the first and second temple. And the Torah is telling us that the antidote, the way to fix, the way to rectify what the 9 days have brought about is specifically through the message of what Aharon represents. Aaron, the brother of Moses, his life gives us the answer. His life, what he personified, gives us the answer to the ills of the world we live in. And what was his life? We're told that he was someone who, in the words of the ethics of our fathers, he was someone who loved peace. He pursued peace. And just important to stop on that for a moment. There are a lot of people that love peace and talk about it, but don't do anything about it. It's very easy to talk and very easy to say, I'm a peace-loving person and I believe in peace. But when the question is whether we're ready to walk the walk, whether we're ready to do it, whether we're ready to go out there, not just to talk about it, not just to discuss it, but to actually do something about it. So it says he loved peace, he pursued peace, and he loved all creatures. And the commentaries explain why we use that word for human beings, he loved all creatures, is to emphasize that Aaron had the ability to love human beings that had no virtue other than, in other words, you can have a person that you're trying to say, well, is there something good about this person? Is there anything nice I can say about this person? Usually you can find something, even if the person generally has some not so nice things and not so nice aspects of their character traits, you can usually find something that you can say, well, at least they have this virtue. Aaron had the ability that even when you were dealing with a human being, that the only nice thing you could say about this person was they're a creature. God created them. They're a creation of God. That's the only virtue. You can't find anything else nice to say. You could just say they have a soul. They were created by God. That's it. He had the ability to love that person too. And we're told again that Aaron, the fact that he passes away on the first of the month of Av, which in the Hebrew calendar will be this Wednesday, and it's at the beginning of this 9-day period of mourning, which mourns all the dysfunction and all the pain and sorrow in our world, is symbolically, the Torah is telling us if we want to fix this pain and sorrow, if we want to rectify, if we want to bring healing to our world, it is via the message of Aaron and his life, which is the message of love, how we learn to, not when it's easy, when it's difficult sometimes, to learn to respect and to love those around us. Now, in Kabbalah, it speaks about the fact that names, the letters, Hebrew letters, and the words that these Hebrew letters make up and the names are not arbitrary, that they have a lot of deep significance. So when you see a name and when you see a word in Hebrew, that Hebrew name, that Hebrew word isn't just something that was just chosen as just a name, but rather that the letters and the word has a lot of deep significance and meaning. As we have explained before, Kabbalah is based on this, the concept that the world is created and is sustained by godly energy, that the world not only was created, but is continuously being created every single moment by godly energy. And of course, there's two challenges that the Kabbalah deals with and two questions. And that is, first of all, godly energy is so sublime and abstract. How does godly energy interact with and create something, a world which is so finite and so limited and so defined? But furthermore, the godly energy by definition is infinite, and infinite means that it does not have it does not have multiplicity. It is simple, it is one. What do we mean by simple and one? That means that anything that is made of parts can be defined as the sum total of those parts. In other words, if you ask someone, what is this phone, right? What is this phone? They'll tell you, the phone, well, it's got a plastic, first of all, it's got a plastic cover, it's got glass, it's got wires, it's got all the things that it has. And what is the phone? It's the sum total of all of those things. When you put all those things together, you have a phone. Everything that has parts can be defined as the sum total of those parts. So if we were to say that God had different character traits, if we were to say that God is wise, God is kind, God is whatever terminology you want to use, whatever trait, ultimately, if we're going to use different things to describe God, as great as they may be, we have now defined God as being this and not something else. And that is not infinity. Infinity means that there is no way by which to define it. There is nothing that it's limited to. It can be anything. And therefore, real infinity is something that is a simple being that is not made of different parts. It's total oneness. It's a oneness that can express itself in any way it wants, but in it in itself, it is just a simple, unified being. And in Maimonides, he says, there is no other being in the world that has that oneness, that simplicity, like God. He is the only being in the world that has that oneness, which is, again, according to Kabbalah, what we mean when we say, Hear, O Israel, our Lord is our God, our Lord is one. When we say our Lord is one, we're not saying he's the number one guy, go God, you're number one. What we mean by that is, on a Kabbalistic level, is the idea that there's only one being in the world that is totally one, that is totally unified, that is not made of different parts. And so the Kabbalah says, if that's the case, and godly energy is a reflection of God, seemingly, of this oneness, how do we go from there to a world in which, of course, there's multiplicity? We live in a world with various different parts. Things there are many different things in our world. On my table here, I've got a cup, and I've got a cell phone, I've got a mouse for my computer. There's people, there's different creatures, there's different elements. We live in a world that's filled with multiplicity. So how does that godly energy that is one result in a world of multiplicity? And so, of course, the Kabbalah says that when this godly energy comes to sustain our world, to put it in very simple terms, it goes through a filter. And when it goes through that filter, the filter does two things. Number one, it has a double purpose, the filter. Number one is that it decreases the intensity of that godly energy. So if you think about a light, and it's a very, very bright light, it's too bright, and you put it through a filter, so now the light now has been filtered, it is less intense, it's not as great as it was before. But also, this filter gives a certain character traits. It colors the godly energy. And there are different filters, and these different filters give different colors to different godly energies. Think of a light coming through colored glass, as we've used the example before, and many different colors in the glass. So depending which color glass the light comes through, the light's going to take on that hue. It's going to take on that color. So if it goes through green glass, now you're going to have a green light coming through. If it goes through red glass, it's going to be a red light. And so the way these filters that the Kabbalah talks about work is that each filter has a certain character trait, has a certain form, it has a certain definition. And what happens when the godly light comes through these various filters is that it takes on that form, it takes on that identity. And now with that identity, it's defined by that identity. And now we can have this godly energy as it comes into this world can have all this multiplicity, because you can have the red godly light. I'm just using the colors as a very primitive example, but you can have red godly light, blue godly light, green godly light. You can have all these different types of godly light that can allow for a world in which you have many different types and many different things. So again, we have this godly light on the one side of the filters coming through as simple one, but as it hits this very, very intricate filter system with many, many different aspects to it, when it comes out the other side, it comes out with a certain form, with a certain identity. Now, it is the same godly light, just to mention parenthetically, because the light that comes through the glass window, when it comes through the glass window, the colored window, it is the same godly light. The godly light is still godly light. It's just now taken on the color to us. We receive it with a certain color, with a certain shade to it. But in essence, the godly light that's coming through is blue, and the godly light that's coming through is red. If you think about the light itself, the light is the same light. It's just how we're viewing it, how we're experiencing it, which is through the filter, which gives it its color. And so in the Kabbalah, it says, this is how we get from a uniform God to a world which is not uniform, which is a world which is not homogeneous, a world in which there is multiplicity, in which there is not total uniformity. There are various different aspects of our world. Every reality is different than the other reality, because the filter system is a multifaceted filter system that has many different parts to it, that gives the godly light this different form and different energy and a different traits that allow it to create a world of multiplicity. And we're told in Kabbalah that the Hebrew letters, that the meaning behind the Hebrew letters, that the Hebrew letters represent, each Hebrew letter represents the form of a certain form that the godly energy takes on. In other words, generally speaking, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet represent the 22 general different forms in which godly energy can take. In a certain sense, you could say the Jewish alphabet is, the Kabbalah says, is the spiritual periodic table. When you think about the periodic table and you think about all the symbols, the Jewish alphabet, the Aleph, represents godly energy that's taken on a certain type of form. That's the letter Aleph symbolizes that form. In fact, in Kabbalah, the shape of the letters are telling you something about the shape, so to speak, or the character trait or the form that the godly energy has taken when it is represented by that letter. So again, these letters represent what does the godly light look like when it comes through a certain filter. When it comes through a certain filter, it comes out looking like an Aleph. What does that mean? The energy has a certain form and certain trait to it. And then when you put together these different letters to make words, these different letters, when they come together in a specific order too, because the order is important, not just the letters, but the order in which these letters are put together, the combination of these different godly energies give birth to different and sustain and create different physical realities. So as we've said before, when you think in Hebrew about the word for water, which is mayim, mayim is the word for water, mayim, it really as a word is closer to H2O than it is to the word water. In other words, the letters mayim, what in Hebrew, the meaning of that is much closer to H2O than it is to the word water. The word water doesn't tell you what's in it. It doesn't tell you anything about it. It's just water. But when you say H2O now, you're telling me there's hydrogen, there's oxygen. You're telling me what's there. In Hebrew, the Hebrew letters are telling us the character, the makeup of the different energies that together form that reality. And so therefore in Kabbalah, whenever we see Hebrew letters, we can spend a lot of time talking about the significance of those letters, how those letters combine to make a word, and what it tells us about the intrinsic makeup of that reality. And of course, this can be done on many, many different levels. It's interesting to note that in Genesis, if you look in Genesis, you will find that after God creates Adam, he brings all the creatures of the world in front of Adam, and Adam is given the great task and to give them names, that he gives a name to each creature. And the commentaries speak about this, that it took Adam's great wisdom and his divine wisdom to be able to give those names. And of course, on a simple level, that's not understood. Names, my children make up names for things all the time. You can just make up names, and names can be anything. We don't have to be very wise to make names for things. Say, I'll call this, I'll call that this, and just give names, whatever comes to mind. What is the great wisdom of Adam giving names? We're told the great wisdom is that he didn't just give arbitrary names. He gave names based on being able to see the soul of each creature, understanding its spiritual energy. And when he understood the spiritual energy of the creature, he could see the Hebrew letters that give you the makeup of that spiritual energy. And the name he gave was specifically based on the intrinsic spiritual energy of that creature. And so it was not just arbitrary. This was great wisdom, divine wisdom, that allowed Adam to give the names of the different creatures. And that's, of course, when we talk about the Hebrew language, just parenthetically, the Hebrew language is unique in that sense. And that's why there's such deep wisdom within the Hebrew language, because the words and the letters that make up different things are not arbitrary. They're not just happen to be. They are very, very specific and express the essence of the character trait of that reality. And that's why we do spend time talking and looking at the Hebrew words and Hebrew names of things. So before we continue, I'll just unmute to see if there's anyone who has got any questions If anyone would like to ask anything before we continue on.
Rabbi, this is Susan Orlov. I hear that, you said that the godly energy is connected to the 22 letters. Is it also connected to the 10 elements, the 7 and the 3 in the I'm blocking on the word for it, but is
10
it
spherotes, the 10 spherotes, yeah. So the answer is yes, there is a relationship between how the 22 letters are also kind of the result of the godly energy passing through these 10 different spheres, which that's for a separate class, really, to talk about the relationship between this 10 spheres and the 22 letters. But it is the same general concept that you have light and energy that on one side is totally one, is unified without any multiplicity, without any identity. When it goes through the filter, like think about light going through the colors, and when it comes out the other side, it does have a character that's so to speak an external character, but it does have character that allows it to have definition, and by having definition, it is able to tell you what things are, and that is what the Hebrew letters represent.
Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Susan Goldstein. Whenever the Torah was given to Moses, what language was it in?
In the original language was in the language of Hebrew, with the Hebrew letters.
That's Hebrew. Okay.
And there were times in which later times they recorded the Talmud, for example, in Aramaic. Aramaic was the more spoken and common language of the layman at the time that the Talmud was written. So that was the Talmud. And today, of course, we might translate Torah in all sorts of languages, but its original language is always the Hebrew. And the Hebrews, and just to note that sometimes when you read a translation of Torah, of any book of Torah, like any language, certain things do get lost in translation. It's very hard sometimes to accurately translate from one language to another language because some words just don't really exist, or that there are no real words to express certain ideas in other languages. But that's why it is important when we can to become more familiar with the Hebrew letters, more familiar with the Hebrew words, because sometimes there's a lot of, again, depth and meaning that's hard to sometimes bring over into another language. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone again, and then we'll continue. We'll continue on. Okay, so now let's go back to the character that we're focusing on today. We're focusing today on the character Aharon. Aharon, as we said, is the symbol, and he personifies this ability to have unconditional love for another. And this is the message of his life. By the way, it's interesting to note that when Aaron dies, it says the entire Jewish people mourned his loss. It does not say that about Moses, and it does not say that about Miriam, his sister. The only one that it says that the entire people, everyone mourned his loss, his passing, was Aaron, specifically because he was a man of love and peace, and his whole life was about bringing peace to different people. Moses represented truth. Truth isn't always so, is sometimes a little bit harsh. Aaron was more a diplomat and was more concerned about bringing peace between people. Moses was a little bit about the raw truth, and sometimes the raw truth can rub some people the wrong way and may not always be loved by everybody. Different characters and different strengths. It's not one better or one worse, but the focus here is on Aaron and his life of love. So I'm going to share a screen that will hopefully, if this works, we'll look at these Hebrew letters and kind of dissect them and see what meaning we can take away from them. Because again, we said it's all about the Hebrew letters and understanding them, and we'll try to look at least at 2 layers of meaning in his name. Let's see. You give me one moment, please, just a little moment here. Okay, on your screen, you should be able to see now, on the right side is his Hebrew name on the top level, Aharon. Okay, and I've translated it there in English. Aleph, Hey, Resh, Nun in the Hebrew, which in the English translates as Aaron. Now, Kabbalah says that if you actually switch around these letters, and I've done the switch for you, you can see it on the bottom. I've taken the Aleph and moved it, taken the Resh and moved it. Each letter is moved. The letters that make up the word for Aharon is the same letters that make up the word Nireh, which is a form of the word vision. Vision, sight. What is the relationship between Aharon and his personification of love and vision? And the answer is that according to the Torah's approach, Kabbalah's approach, love needs vision, requires vision. When we say vision, vision means to see beyond that which is apparent. That is what a visionary is. A visionary is somebody who can see and is able to comprehend and is able to be aware of things that most people cannot see. Vision requires looking deeper, not looking at what things are on their surface, but looking a little deeper, not looking at what's readily apparent, but looking at what's behind it. If we think about in general, our whole approach, Kabbalah's whole approach to life, it says that the world is a place of concealment. It conceals the real truth. It does so in order to give man free choice, but it conceals a truth. And the truth that it conceals is that the world is nothing but God, is nothing but an expression of godliness. It's not an independent reality. It feels like an independent reality, and we may even doubt that there's a God that creates this world. We may not feel it, may not be apparent, because the nature of the world is that, as we said, we have a filter that conceals. It's a world of concealment. And in order to connect with meaning and purpose in this life, it does require looking beyond that outer shell, that external shell, and we have to look deeper. We have to peel away the layers, look deeper to get in touch with a higher truth, that life has purpose, life has meaning. There is a creator that created this world for an ultimate purpose. That's not something that's readily apparent. It requires thought. It requires reflection. It requires one to think and to see, in a sense, beyond that which is apparent. And we're told, interestingly, that every human being is called a miniature world, olam katan, a miniature world. In other words, just like to really understand the world, you have to look beyond the facade and you have to look deeper. The same is true regarding having a relationship with another human being and appreciating another human being. In order to appreciate another human being, you also have to see beyond the facade. You have to look deeper. You have to see something beyond that which is readily apparent. In other words, what you see when you look at someone, just you glance at somebody. When I say glance, not just what you see physically, what you comprehend, what you see about them in their character. They may be a person who not only physically may be not so attractive, but I'm talking about someone who, more importantly, may spiritually or emotionally in their character, they may not be so attractive. They may have some negative character traits that are not that are off-putting, that make you not like the person, or give you, or it makes it very challenging for you to like the person. That is what's readily apparent. That's what you first see. That's what you first notice. It requires deeper vision to dig and to get beyond that which is readily apparent, and to behold that beyond this, there is a soul that is filled with virtue, that does want the right thing, that wants to be connected to that which is good. The fact that there's negative character traits is the result of possibly their upbringing, negative experiences they've had in life, the lack of their education and opportunity to nurture the good that's within them. Maybe they've had some very negative experiences with other human beings. There's so many different possibilities about why these negative traits have developed in this person, but it isn't who they are intrinsically. Think about, and we always use this example, of a parent and a child. A parent does have that ability that even when a child expresses negative character traits, the parent may be bothered by those negative character traits and may be disappointed in those negative character traits, but they don't define the essence of their child as being bad and being negative because of those character traits. They would say, I know that they are intrinsically good. I know that there's a goodness in there. There's a reason, there's a problem, there's why their child is expressing themselves in this way, but that's not who they are. It's not their essence. And the parent has this ability to see what no one else can see. You know, the famous expression, a face that only a mother could love. But it's not only just when talking about a physical face, we're talking about also their character, the face of their character. Sometimes you see a person, and it would take a mother to appreciate and see good in that person. And this is true about human beings in general, that again, when we are struggling to try to love our fellow man, when we're dealing with a certain individual, the Torah is telling us, Aaron did it. How did he do it? Look at the letters of his name. If you look at the letters of his name, you come to the conclusion that the letters spell the word vision. It requires vision. Starts in the intellect. You can say, well, isn't love an emotion? And the answer is, as we always say, yes, it is an emotion, but all emotions begin as perspectives, a viewpoint. We don't like this person because we see them in a certain way. That's why we don't like them, or that's why we're having a hard time to like them. If we look deeper and if we see deeper, we would be able to get past some of those negative things, and we would learn to be able to love that person, to love that individual. It's interesting, and we've mentioned this before, that in the Hasidic teachings, I'll stop the share for a moment here. In the Hasidic teachings, it says that the Alter Rebbe actually writes that when you're struggling to love somebody, think of them, this is ironic, but think of them as dirt. He says that's the way to get to love somebody. When you see someone that you really are having a hard time liking, think of them as dirt. So, of course, that sounds counterintuitive. But the answer is, when you look at dirt, what do you see? Dirt. It's dirty. It's dirt. But when we all know that in the dirt, what is there in the dirt, in the earth? If you dig in the earth, you can find gems, you can find jewels, you can find minerals, you can find precious metals, you can find oil, you can find all sorts of things. But it's not what's readily apparent. What you see at first is dirt. All I see is dirt. But if I'm willing to dig, if I'm willing to go deeper, I can find gems, jewels, I can find precious metals, wonderful mineral resources, but they're all hidden and deep. So yes, some people you can see, and it's easy to see the beauty of their character on the outside. Some people, we need vision. We need to look a little deeper. We have to put on our glasses, our spiritual glasses, to look deeper. So in other words, it's not a thing that either some people I like and some people, some people say, oh, some people I just like and some people I don't. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't get myself to like someone I don't like. And the answer is you can. It takes work. It takes vision. It takes thinking and contemplating and looking deeper into that individual to see deeper and to appreciate, understand certain things, and to see them on a deeper level that they may not even see themselves at. They may not even see themselves in that way, but to connect and to see their essence of their soul. And the essence of their soul is godly. The essence of their soul is good. The essence of their soul is virtuous. And with that knowledge, you're able to slowly but surely change the way you feel about the person. There is another layer here, and I'm going to share it again. The next layer is here. This is the name Aharon on the top in the Hebrew. Aleph, Hey Resh, Nun. Again, that on the top spells the word Aharon. But if you split up the word, again, in its various components here, we find three things going on. Aleph, which is the number 1. And again, I'm going from right to left because I'm doing the Hebrew here. So we have Aleph, which is the number 1. Har, which means mountain. And the final letter Nun, which symbolically is connected to drawing down. We have, very interestingly, in Hebrew, the letter Vav. The letter Vav looks like this letter, except it's not as long as this one. The letter Vav is always symbolized as drawing down. It's interesting that the letter Vav is also the symbol for our emotions, because we have 7 emotions in total, but specifically, when we are more specific, it's actually 6 basic emotions. The 7th is more about expressing our emotions, but our emotions are really 6 emotions. And the letter Vav is 6. Vav also, it looks like this last letter here, symbolizes drawing down, because emotions is about taking abstract ideas and making them personal to ourselves. Until we have an emotion about something, until we feel about we have a feeling about something, it's not personal, it's abstract. So I can know something, I can know a scientific fact about something, it's just an abstract concept. It means nothing to me. It doesn't mean anything to me. When does it mean something to me? When I have an emotion to it. It makes me feel a certain way. It could make me feel awe, it can make me feel respect, make me feel disgust, it can make me feel angry, happy, whatever the feeling that concept makes me feel. But when I have a feeling, I'm drawing it down. I'm bringing it into me. I'm making it real to me. So the letter here, which is the final letter of his word, of his name, is the final nun. Some letters in Hebrew have a different form when they're at the end of the word. One of them is nun. And in this case, it's this vav, this line, but it goes even further down. Again, it's the concept of drawing down. In a Torah scroll, you have a line, an imaginary line. They don't actually have lines in there, but the way they write straight is they scratch lines into Torah scrolls using a ruler and a razor. And then the scribe writes on that line. If you look at this name, the Aleph, the bottom of this letter Aleph, and the bottom of the Hey, and the bottom of the Resh, they would all sit on the line. That final letter part of it goes below the line. That's the neat significance of that letter. Part of it goes below the line. Now, what's the symbol here? What's the meaning between one mountain drawing down? So in Kabbalah, it says as follows, that the letters of his name are telling us the following message. We have to first envision and understand that there is one source to everything in this world. There is the one, as we said before, the one God. The one God, the God of oneness, the God that is totally one, and the only God, that is the one that we have to begin to contemplate on. It's a contemplation about the fact that there's one God. And when we contemplate that, we realize that all of us are all coming from the same place. So every single creature, every single human being, every single person in the world is all coming from the same place. We have one parent, one father, one mother. We all come from the same place. We're all creatures, creations, and children of the same being. That's the one. When we realize that, and when we contemplate that, even when we see certain things that we don't necessarily love about the other person in their character, the knowledge that we are all really one and an extension of this oneness and all coming from the same place allows me to connect with and to have a feeling of love towards them, just like we have a natural feeling of love towards a member of our family. Of course, sometimes within families, unfortunately, there can be friction and things that separate us. But without there being negative influence separating us within family structures, generally the fact that someone is a family member means that there's a natural love and a natural sense of connection and oneness that we have. We come from the same family. We share the same parents. We're siblings. We're together. There is a certain affinity and there's a certain love that comes from the knowledge that we are one. And in Judaism, when we talk about mountains have a symbolic meaning. In other words, a mountain, what is a mountain? If you think about a mountain, it's really the earth is flat. And when you have a mountain, it's a protrusion of the earth upwards. And that protrusion of the earth, so to speak, surging upwards, represents in Judaism love. It's first and foremost a love to God. Think about a human being here on this world, so to speak, on the flat world, surging upwards towards God, looking towards God, trying to get closer. It represents a surging towards something. We have, in general, 2 emotions. The 2 general emotions are love and awe. Awe being fear and awe. Awe is more drawing back and being in awe, something you feel very small in their presence. Love is being drawn towards, attracted to. A har, a mountain, it says the physical shape of the mountain, what it represents is love. In other words, the contemplation of that one God brings us to a place of love. Interesting to note, actually, that I'm gonna reshare in a moment. It's interesting to note that Moses, we know where Moses was buried. It says Moses was buried on Mount Nebo, Har Nevo, Mount Nebo. If you've ever done some traveling in Israel or done some learning about Israel, you may have come across Mount Nebo. It's actually in Jordan. You can see it from Israel, Mount Nebo. Where was Aaron buried? Aaron was buried in a place called Har Hahar, which in English means a mountain on top of another mountain, a double mountain. Har Hahar, a mountain of the mountain. That's where he's buried. Now, why is it that of all places, that is the burial place of Aharon? Because he is the man of love. So, of course, where is he buried? He's buried on the mountain of mountains, because mountain is, again, love. And that's why he's buried in a place called the mountain of mountains. And then with that love, we can draw down that love to everyone that we meet. We can draw down that love to everyone we meet, even when we're dealing with someone whose life is below the line. Remember, I said this letter kind of goes below the line. It kind of gets, you can see it's further down than the other letters. That means even when someone's life has fallen down below the line of what is right and what it should be, they have kind of fallen off the way. They have fallen off the path. Their life is dipping below the minimum of what it should be. And they've gone below the line. Even for someone like that, we can have love. It doesn't mean in any way that we condone or endorse negative behavior, but we can have a feeling of love towards that person, which means that therefore we want to help them get better, right? Think about a child, a parent with a child that's not behaving. We don't say, well, if they're not behaving, I don't love the child anymore. I love my child. It bothers me that they're not behaving, and I want to do whatever I can to help them behave. That's the response. Not my child doesn't behave. I no longer love them. Good riddance. No, that's not the case. The answer is general. Of course, there's extreme cases, but generally speaking, it is I'm disappointed. It hurts. I want to see how I can help them get better. And it's interesting to note that in that teaching of our ethics of our fathers, where it says that Aaron loved peace, he pursued peace, he loved all creatures. The next line is, and he drew them all close to the Torah. What is that? Why is that? Because in other words, when you're dealing with someone whose only virtue is that they're a creature and whose life has fallen below the line, your love is expressed in trying to help them, trying to teach. Not in a dogmatic way, of course, not in a way that you're preaching and not speaking down to someone, because that doesn't work, but in a way that you embrace somebody and in a non-judgmental way, and you try to lift them up to get their life back on top of the line. But again, here, the letters of his name, the contemplation of the one source of every human being. And this brings us to the heart, to the mountain, to the sense of love, the surging towards, upwards, towards God, towards others. And then we can draw that down in the way we express that even to those who are below the line of what is normal and what is correct. And that is the name, his name, according to Kabbalah, what his name teaches us about the different, maybe the different traits and different methods that we need to use spiritually in order to achieve more love. Now, of course, like anything else, this is more easily said than done. The concepts are easy, they make sense. Practicing it is a much more difficult thing. When trying to deal with people that are sometimes a little difficult, and our natural reaction, of course, is one in which we don't have a positive feeling towards that person. It does require some effort and some focus, but Kabbalah says there is a path, there is a way, there is a method, and the method requires vision, looking deeper, and as we said, it requires the understanding of the one source of all creation, that we all come from the same place, we're all siblings, we're all family, we're all one, and when we understand that, it helps us overcome some of the negative feelings and, of course, develop positive feelings. So I'll unmute, and then we'll do our review sheet. Any questions? Okay, let me get the sheet up that we have here. This is our review sheets for today. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, are you able to see that?
Can It disappeared.
Hold on. Can we see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna mute because we're getting some feedback on the thing. Hold on a second. And then I'll unmute for questions again at the end. Kabbalah of Love, lesson 299. The spiritual energy of this time of the year is connected with love of your fellow man. The biblical figure, Aaron, personified unconditional love. The godly energy that creates and sustains our reality goes through a filter that conceals and gives form to the energy. The different forms of different energies explain the multifaceted reality in which we exist. The different forms of energy are symbolized by different Hebrew letters and the specific combinations of these letters. This was the wisdom of Adam in giving names to all creatures. The Hebrew word for Aaron contains the recipe for greater unconditional love. The letters are the same as vision. It requires deeper vision in order to truly love your fellow man. You've got to look deeper. In addition, the first letter is connected to one God. The next two letters is mountain, which is the symbol for love. And the final letter is about drawing it all the way down to every creature. Every single creature and every single human being, we can express that love to when we realize that we all come from that same place. And again, that's based on the letters and the Hebrew letters of his name. Yes, questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
You know, in the Bible, it says that Aaron was jealous. Was there a turning point in his spiritual life that made him into a loving person?
Where does it say he was jealous?
Well, you know, he was criticizing Moses and also Miriam, and God punished them.
Right.
With like leprosy or something, some kind of skin disease.
So first of all, Miriam was the one who mentioned something, wasn't even critical. She mentioned something. Aaron was only the one who received that. And that's why he was not punished with leprosy. Miriam was. So it doesn't say there he was jealous. And on the contrary, I think if anything, we find that as the older brother, he was very modest in allowing his younger brother really to take the more prominent role of leadership. And he wasn't jealous about that, it seems. He was all about keeping the peace. And he was all about helping people. It says actually that he did marriage counseling, believe it or not. That was one of his jobs, was that he would help couples that were struggling with their marriages. He had an amazing ability to bring two people together that were having a hard time seeing the good in each other. He helped them achieve that. Any other questions?
I have a question. So in general, in the form of Kabbalah study, using number values and reshuffling of the letters, is this extended to every name and every word in the Torah?
Yes. The answer is yes. The answer is that it would take a lifetime of study to figure out what the meanings of all of that was, and what the rules are about how and when. And it's like any mathematical system. It's not it's not like I can just pop any combination I want and add any numbers I want. There is a system to it and rules that what works and what doesn't work and what can be done and what can't be done based on a system that's logical. But it's a system that one has to learn about. When can you reshuffle? How can you reshuffle those letters? And what letters could be reshuffled and which ones can't be reshuffled? When do the fact that this number is similar to this number have significance, and so on and so forth? That requires a lot of knowledge of the systems and the rules of those systems. But yes, the answer is yes. There is no word and no letter that doesn't have that significance and that ability to see deeper into those letters and names. It just there are people who are masters and as far as understanding the rules of how this works.
Are there new reshufflings occurring that they're allowed?
Yes, the answer is yes, but only with by people who have all the knowledge of what's considered a proper equation, so to speak, and what is just your own made up, So it has to be done by somebody who's got the background and the knowledge.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Is that system called Haggadic?
No, Haggadah is something else. Haggadah is basically the stories and the midrash, the oral tradition of stories, parables, and things of that nature that are behind many of the stories of the Torah. It's not related. There is a thing called gematria. Gematria is the numeric values of things, which is a different thing. Again, there's numeric values.
Right.
There's the meaning of the letters. There's also the shapes of the letters. There's also certain letters that can be interchanged with other letters, only certain letters. There's also where you have systems where the first letter of Hebrew alphabet can be interchanged with the last one, and the second one with the second to last one. And in other words, there is a mirror here. In other words, first to the last, second to the second to last. And these letters are mirrored and they have relationships. The first one has a relationship with the last one, the second to the second last one, and so on and so forth. So that also has significance. There's many, many, many systems. All these systems are not just, again, arbitrary. They're all meaningful. And when one system is used and when another system is used, and why once, and so on and so forth, that requires a little bit more knowledge, not of which I don't have all. I have some, but not all. And of course, it's a lifetime of learning. Okay, any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Okay, sure.
I just think it's amazing, and I want to thank you and just kind of acknowledge for everyone, this is our 299th class. That means next week or next time it'll be 300 classes.
Yeah,
That is
thank you.
just incredible.
So
Thank you.
So kudos to everyone who has survived it.
Yes.
It's been there for the ride and survived it, part of the ride. So thank God, and we should continue. Hopefully the next 300 lessons we'll be able to learn more, understand things, understand deeper things in a more clear and in a more easily accessible way. So to take the deepest of the deepest ideas and to draw it all the way down that anyone can understand it. Because of course that's what we want to do, is take the deepest of things and not to compromise in what we're learning. We want to give people the deepest ideas, but at the same time to find the language and the words and the vocabulary to bring it down so everyone can, even without background, can understand it.
Terrific.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Lots
Thank
of
you,
blessing,
Rabbi.
success in all that you do.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Excellent.